We move now to Deputy Michael Healy-Rae, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taoiseach. The news broke earlier in the year of the cervical check smear scandal, and it is most unfortunate that as a result of this, women have lost their lives. Emma Vic Vahuna, rest in peace, was one of those women who had campaigned tirelessly until her death on the 7th of October. Her death is as a result of both human error and lack of accountability by the laboratory, the HSE and the Department of Health under the watchful eye of numerous governments. Everyone in the country will never forget the interview Emma did last May on the Morning Ireland radio programme where she said, "I'm dying when I don't need to die." This has now come to pass, and she has lost her life to human error at 37 years of age, along with other women. This is unforgivable, and there is no accountability. A number of questions have remained unanswered in the midst of other distractions which need to be answered in specific detail. Earlier in the year it was reported that 3,000 or so smear tests were to be rechecked. This was a matter of urgency, but it has not been mentioned since the summer recess. What is the current status on those 3,000 or so smear tests, and will the Taoiseach make a statement on this? What are the details of these results, and have these women been contacted on same? News filtered through over the past couple of weeks which has suggested that a new contract has been entered into with a US laboratory at the centre of the smear scandal, and clarification must be sought publicly, as this is of huge health importance for the daughters of Ireland. Is it a case that a new contract was signed with the US laboratory Quest Diagnostics recently? Who drew up this contract? Who advised on this contract? What involvement or role had the Taoiseach or the Minister for Health in this, given the seriousness of this matter for the health of the women in Ireland? In relation to this contract, is there any truth that the laboratory wanted an indemnity clause in the contract for fear of future cases, and could the Taoiseach give a clear, detailed statement on this? How could a contract be entered into with the said laboratory, given that there are still cases pending through the courts and possibly more that have not come to light yet? Why are the Irish citizens being kept in the dark on this very important matter? And will the Taoiseach make a statement taking into consideration the importance and the seriousness of this issue?
Deputy Healy-Rae, Taoiseach.
Thank you, Deputy Ray. First of all, I want to once again offer my condolences to the family and friends of Emma Vic Vahuna at what is a very difficult time for them, and also to the families of other women who lost their lives to cervical cancer. And I want to ensure everyone in this House that government is deeply committed to ensuring that cervical screening continues and provides Irish women with a high-quality service that they can have confidence in. And as I've said before, I'm determined that some good should come from all of this. First, that we make cervical cancer a very rare disease in Ireland, and second, that we build a more open and honest health service. And we can do those things by continuing with cervical screening, improving the screening programme with new testing, bringing in the HPV vaccine for boys, and encouraging parents to ensure that their children have that vaccine, and also by reforming our health service, changing our laws around open disclosure, but more important than that, bringing about a culture in our health service of honesty and openness and disclosure. The issues the Deputy is raising emerged at the outset of the controversy around cervical check. Many women were very concerned, and it's essential that we give them the facts. That's why a scoping inquiry was established by the government with the support of the Oireachtas, led by Dr. Gabriel Scally and his expert team. Dr. Scally provided the final report of his inquiry in September, and he gave us the very welcome reassurance about the quality and standards of the labs currently being used by cervical check. Indeed, he and his team visited those labs. He was satisfied with the quality management process in these labs. It's very important to say that Dr. Scally confirmed that he found no reason why the existing contracts for the labs should not continue until our new HPV testing system is in place. He also said that the continuation of screening in the coming months is of crucial importance, and the government fully agrees with this assessment. Screening does not detect all cancers and precancers, but it does detect most of them, and that saves lives. So, as Dr. Scally points out in his report, if you screen 1,000 women for cervical cancer, about 20 will have precancerous cells or cancer. Screening will pick up 15 of those 20. It'll miss 5. It's a misunderstanding that missing 5 of those 20 is negligent. In some cases it may be, in the vast majority of cases it will not. That is the limitations of screening, unfortunately. Cervical check has been very successful in reducing cervical cancer rates in Ireland, and as stated in the Scally report, the lifetime risk of women getting cancer was 1 in 135 back in 2015, and now is 1 in 96, so that's a substantial improvement, falling by about 7% a year. I'm very happy to say that heads of an agreement have been signed with the contracted labs to extend their contracts pending the introduction of the new HPV testing programme. This allows for the continuation of the existing service without interruption. This follows on from detailed negotiations undertaken by the HSC. Agreement on the extension of these contracts was reached on the 13th of October. However, this is subject to formal conclusion of the contract, which has not yet been done. In these negotiations, discussions focused on extending the capacity of the labs to deal with the backlog of smears. The backlog has arisen as a result of significantly increased demand for repeat smear tests, which we've seen in recent months for understandable reasons. So we're going to have to catch up on that backlog, notwithstanding the shortage of cytologists.
Coming back to Deputy Healy-Rae.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach. I'll expect more detail, because more detail should be given by you with regard to the questions I asked. Also, over 20 women under the age of 25 have been diagnosed with cervical cancer since the screening programme began a decade ago. Would you, the Department of Health and your government, think that in the interest of women's health and safety, that the screening programme should be extended to ladies under the age of 25? And could you see a benefit to that? And could you see that saving lives in the future? And could you give us your views on that subject?
I'm maybe a little bit out of date and a little bit out of practice, but the last time I checked, the best scientific evidence was that extending cervical screening to women under 25 would not be beneficial. What you always have to bear in mind with screening is the whole problem around false negatives, which I think people are now very familiar with, and how they can cause false reassurance, and also the big problem with false positives, picking up abnormalities that look like cancer but aren't cancer, and women then having unnecessary further tests, unnecessary procedures, in some cases unnecessary operations. So always when it comes to making a decision about screening, which is not diagnostic, when it comes to making a decision about screening, you have to weigh up the pros and cons, and there are always pros and cons. And the best scientific evidence, as I understand at the moment, is that screening women under 25, the cons would outweigh the pros, and that's why it isn't being done. I think you did ask about the review of 300 women in your previous question. That's a review of 300 women who've been diagnosed with cervical cancer in the past 10 years, but only 1,850 of those attended cervical check. Others didn't participate in screening. They have all been contacted, or rather 1,600 of the 1,850 women have been contacted with letters asking for their consent to look into their cases. It's important that we get consent before we look into people's health issues and their files and their previous tests. Of the 813 consent forms that have been returned, 97% of the women so far who have responded have agreed to take part in the review.